You know that moment when you're staring at flight prices and you genuinely cannot tell if it's a good deal or you're about to overpay by $400? Or you've got a pile of points sitting in some loyalty account and you have no idea if you should use them or just pay cash? Today, I brought in reinforcements. My friend Kim, who happens to be a travel agent, is joining me, and we're going to get into all of it: airfare, hotels, points, miles, and the thing that almost everyone gets wrong when they're booking a Hawaii trip. Stay with me. Welcome back to Hawaii Travel Made Easy. I'm your host, Marcie, and today is actually our 100th episode. It's been such a fun ride, and in celebration, we're doing something a little different. I have a guest. Her name is Kim. She runs Stuffed Suitcase, and she's a travel agent. But here's the thing, I didn't just find her on the internet. Kim and I have been friends for years. We're both travel bloggers based in the Seattle area. We've actually traveled together, and she stayed at my house. So when I say I trust her with my clients, I mean that in the most literal way possible. Here's how this works. When someone books a Hawaii travel consultation with me, we get on a Zoom and we figure out the whole picture: the islands, the areas, the itinerary, all of it. And if they still need help with the actual booking side, I connect them directly with Kim. She takes it from there. It's a handoff I feel really good about, and I think by the end of this episode, you'll understand why. Today, we're talking about the stuff that genuinely confuses people when they're booking a Hawaii trip: airfare pricing, hotel rates, and whether your points are actually worth using or if you're better off just paying cash. And we're going to bust a couple of myths that I hear constantly in consultations, because there's some real misinformation floating around out there. Kim, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're finally here. For people who don't know you yet, introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
I am so happy to be here, Marcie. I am Kim Tate. So a little bit about me: I grew up in Kansas and never got to travel. So very much a hometown Midwest girl. And I went off to college for a year. And that was when I started booking my own flights to come home on holidays and things like that. And I started going, I love this. I love figuring out what flight to do, what airport to go to, all of that. And then once I got married, I just kind of stuck to it, kept planning, and came about to start a blog called Stuffed Suitcase. So I started that in 2012. And it was all because I traveled with my husband. We had kids, and I never thought that people stopped traveling with kids. So we just kept traveling. And now my kids are off to college. So I've been doing this quite a while. I just had someone who was a follower the whole time, has loved me forever. And she met my daughter, who had a glass of champagne because my oldest is now legal drinking age. And she was like, wait, how can you have champagne? I remember following you when you were this little munchkin. So that's a little bit about me. And now that I've used all that, I've had those decades of experience of planning my own trips. I've also become a travel advisor, and I get to use all my knowledge and experience and help other people plan their vacations. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. So you're actually a full service travel agent, right? Disney trips, Alaskan cruises, trips all over the world. But you and I have a special Hawaii partnership where I send you my clients. How did that come about? Why does it work?
I love our partnership, Marcie. It makes so much sense. So I have been to Hawaii a few times, but certainly not anywhere close to your 40 plus times. I don't know. Are you at 50 by now? You've got to be close, probably. I don't even know what your number is, but certainly don't have your expertise all over the islands and multiple islands. So I think the reason we work well is that you're set up where you kind of use your expertise to help give people direction on their planning. Like, hey, this island's going to be best for you. This area is the best if you're looking for this kind of resort. You kind of help guide them. And then you come off to me, and I get to do my side of it, where I put things into motion. I get them quotes. I figure out what's included in rates. I figure out, well, how are you going to get a rental car? And okay, you need to consider parking then. And maybe it would be better to just pay for a transfer since you're staying at the resort. So I get to work out those logistics and actually do the booking, but you get to help them kind of get the directionality and make sure that they're in the right place for the perfect vacation.
I think it's been a great partnership because I love chatting with people about their trips and the cool things they can do and that kind of stuff. But I really hate the logistical part of actually booking things. And I have been asked for years now, are you a travel agent? Can you just book this trip for me? And I was like, I don't, but I will find somebody. So I'm so
Yeah.
glad that this has worked out.
Well, and the funny thing about travel agents, I even, because I do the planning side of it. I love researching the hotels and comparing the apples and oranges. And it's like, well, this resort fee here, or this has this pool, or, this is 2 blocks from the beach, but it's a lot cheaper and you still have a view. I love comparing those kind of things. But the thing, I had to get so much training and set up to become a travel agent and a travel advisor. So I do think it's smart to pair that well. And really take advantage of the different areas of knowledge because I have to know all these different booking engines. And, we just don't go to one place and go, okay, this is where, this is what we're booking for you. We have to look at a lot of information and, narrow it down for people.
Yeah, I think we're both professionals in very different aspects of a Hawaii vacation, so it
Yep,
works out really.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into it. Airfare is the thing that stresses my listeners out more than almost anything in the Hawaii planning process. So someone's sitting there watching prices bounce around and they don't know whether to book or keep waiting. What are they actually supposed to be looking for?
Yeah, the biggest advice I have here is Google Flights, which sounds funny to say, but it is the best tool for kind of helping people. If they're early enough in the planning phase where they can kind of research and figure it out, Google Flights is amazing. You put in your airport you want to go to, your airport you're going like from, and you can even add multiple. You can add up to 5 airports for like you and I. You can put in Portland, Seattle, Plainfield. You can put in all those airports. I was tracking prices to go to Italy last fall, and I actually added Vancouver, and I found an amazing business class flight out of Vancouver. So I just drove, I'm on the north end, so I drove up a little bit. So you can kind of have flexibility if you're willing to move around on hotels or you're willing to move around on airports. So that's really nice. I like that. And then once you put in your dates, once you put in your route, as you're clicking on the calendar view, it'll actually show you like green numbers on the days sometimes. So you're able to go like, oh, I see that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is a lot cheaper than if I fly out on that Friday or Saturday. So it might be a good way for you to also go like, oh, I'll just adjust our dates a little bit and look at that. But the real benefit of Google Flights is that you can track your prices and you can also look at a price graph. There's a button that most people miss, and it'll say if the price is currently typical, low, or high. And people sometimes go straight to like the tickets and the prices, and they miss that little like, hey, are the prices typical, low, or high? And that's a good indicator. Like maybe I should book now. But also at that price graph, I just, to get ready for this podcast, I put in, Seattle to Honolulu. And you can see that coming up in Memorial Day for the end of May, the prices start jumping and they hold like much higher all the way through summer. And then you see the peak in Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's all shown through Google Flights. And that's based on what they've seen for price history. So that's the biggest advice I have for people is that if you look at that price graph or if you look and that same prices are typical or low, it might be a good idea to go ahead and book.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I always miss that graph too because I do check Google
Yeah.
Flights and every once in a while I'm like, I feel like this is not a good deal. And so I'm gonna have to definitely look out for that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there like a rough price point where you'd say, yes, book this? Or does it really vary too much by the departure city to give a straight answer, like to go to Hawaii?
Yeah, 100% varies way too much, especially when you're comparing different airports. Certain airports get a lot of flights and they're going to have a lot of competition on certain routes, and you can't know that. Like I just saw an article that was saying Alaska is not going to fly from San Francisco to Newark. So that probably means that United or whoever flies that route might actually be able to raise their prices a little bit because they just lost a competitor on that route. So it's really hard to be able to say it with any surety. That's where the Google Flights comes in. You just need to really look and say, okay, if, based on what I'm seeing historically from these airports, I should probably go ahead and book it. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the last minute deal? Like I hear about this a lot, like the idea that if we wait long enough, a deal will drop. Is this truth or a myth?
I want to add something back on I'm gonna talk about this one, but I'm gonna add something back on the book it now type thing deal. I do want to say there's a caveat right now with the price of oil being so crazy high. So anybody who's planning a Hawaii trip this year, it's probably not a bad idea to just go ahead and book it now. The price, like once airlines start raising those prices for the summer and the fall holidays, they're not going to suddenly go, oh, oil's cheaper, let's lower the rates. That's going to take a few months for them to actually start competing again in the market to lower the rates. So that's just an added caveat on that. So those last minute deals, I suspect, are especially going to be rare this year just because of the high oil costs and how they're having to pass that on to consumers. I would also say that I belong to 3 travel deal tracking, like email alert programs, 3 different ones. And Hawaii comes up very rarely, So it's just not one that you can really count on. Like I think I've seen more deals to Paris than Hawaii over the past year. So it's just something to keep in mind that it's not one of those routes that often gets discounted too much. So keep that in mind. And then I would also say people don't always realize, this is kind of an added little expert tip for you guys. If you're not on a basic economy ticket, a lot of airlines don't charge change fees anymore because of, it's kind of a carryover from COVID. And now with all the different travel issues that are happening in the States, they're not charging those change fees. So if you do happen to see that a price dropped and you already booked, you can often call into your airline and say, hey, I want to rebook at this lower rate. Now, you're not going to get a refund back to your credit card likely. You'll probably get a credit with the airline that has to be used in a year or something along those lines. But that is something to keep in mind. And there are sites that are now doing that for you, and you pay them a commission. I know there's two. One's called Payback, P-A-I, back, B-A-C-K, and one's called Junovo. And you can put in your flight information and they'll track that. And then if they find the flight for cheaper, they can rebook it. I'm hoping it doesn't get rebooked as a third-party booking. I'm not quite sure on that. I haven't used it personally, but they rebook it and you pay like a 10 or 20% commission, which is not a bad deal since you're just getting the money back anyways. So a lot of people are finding success with using those two programs if you don't want to track it yourself and get on the phone.
Oh, that's awesome. I hadn't heard of those. Do you know if those are free or if you have to?
Yeah.
I guess
they're totally
you pay
free
afterwards, sort of.
Yeah. So if they find you a better deal and they save you $200, you're going to pay, if it's 10%, you pay $20 in a commission to them for getting it. So you're only going to get the 180 back. And so that's how it works, is that they make the money on finding those deals and getting the commission share.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not the full airfare. It's on the savings amount.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Let's do the same thing with hotels. I actually have a whole episode on resort versus condo versus vacation rental. It's episode 38. So I don't want to rehash all of that. But from a booking strategy standpoint, how does somebody know if the rate they're seeing is actually good?
Okay. I think hotels is definitely going to be trickier. The best thing I would advise is really comparing apples to apples. So this is where, when I'm researching any city, not just Hawaii, but any town or area I'm going to go to, I often use those third-party platforms like, Expedia, hotels.com, booking.com, any of the ones, whatever one you like better of what their map and system looks like. I go to that and I put in the city or the area I want to stay at. And I kind of start using the filters on those. And it's like, oh, I want to be in a 4-star. And I want to have pools, and I want to be in a hotel, not an Airbnb. Or like, you can start using those filters to really get comparing more apples to apples. So you're not comparing, oh, there's a $100 hotel here, but it's got, a 2-star rating and it's not got good reviews. Whereas you're like only comparing 4 stars, you can go, okay, well, here's a few 4-star options. And so when you look at that map, you really get an idea of pricing. So you can be like, oh, they're all around the $350 to $450 mark, or $350 to $400, or you can kind of see, and you can see where the outliers might be. And are they really worth that $70 more a night, or are they not? So comparing that is, I think, the big thing to look at. And then I think the other part of that, the caveat, is just to make sure you're comparing the total all-in price, because one might charge a resort fee of $30 a night and one might charge $50 a night. So making sure, like, it might look $70 cheaper, but if you are paying more, in resort fees, then that adds up as well.
That's a really good point. So should people basically pretend like they're making the reservation to get that final price?
You can do that. Sometimes they don't always show it well on different, the different platforms. Sometimes they're good, and they'll even say if it includes like the resort fee on higher end properties, sometimes they roll it in, or, like, oh, you can book this rate and it'll include breakfast. And they like to do some of that, like the extra rates, which isn't always a better deal. Like, oh, get the parking one, the parking rate. And sometimes it doesn't work out that well. Most of the time they'll say if there's a mandatory fee, but if you're not good at reading that, sometimes it makes sense to go to the hotel's website and then once I determine where I want to be, go to the hotel's website to really get the price point. Often the booking directly is the same price or better than booking through an OTA. And when you book through one of those online platforms, just a little caveat with that, you're often given a run of the house room. So sometimes they give like the more problematic rooms to those, and they keep the nicer ones. So maybe it's like, oh, the corner rooms are actually the same level, but we're going to give the hotel the rooms that are by the elevator or that right next to the housekeeping, or the ice machine. Those go to the Expedia bookings. And the ones that book with Marriott Direct, we're going to give them the non-noisy rooms. So you never know, but some hotels are sneaky like that. So But yeah, you can go through the booking as long as you're not putting in your credit card and saying like reserve now or book now. You can kind of get an idea, but a lot of times they won't show it in their own pricing. You have to read the details and it'll say a mandatory resort fee. And so do that research and make sure you're comparing those numbers.
That's perfect. Now I want to
Yeah.
talk about hotel loyalty programs because I know a lot of people use points to stay in Hawaii because it's kind of expensive when you pay cash sometimes. So, like Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, is it worth chasing status specifically for Hawaii trip, or is that a rabbit hole that doesn't really pay off for most people?
Yeah, I love this question. I also love that you said Marriott correctly. Most people don't know that.
Only
It is
because you said it correctly, and I went, "Oh
I was
shoot!"
like, you're so good. Yeah. Good job. So I would say for most people who are not frequent travelers and this is like a one-off trip for them, it probably isn't going to make a lot of sense because to get status, you really have to be staying often. I mean, you know me, I'm a frequent traveler and even I can't normally get like bed you call it heads in bed stays like 15 nights a year or whatever. It's hard to hit some of those status points. I will say that every once in a while, it makes sense that if you are going to travel more often or you do like a certain brand, like Marriott has a very nice footprint. So it's often a popular brand for people where, Hilton has some nice perks and options they all have options with suites and things like that. So I think the tricky thing is if you are a frequent traveler, it might look at actually getting one of the higher end cards. And I say that because those will come with higher level status. So like a Marriott card that is available, that's the highest is like a brilliant card and it has platinum status with it, which gets you breakfast or a dining food credit. And so that might pay off for you, especially if you're going to stay multiple times. But when you look at that card, I believe it's a $600 annual fee. It might even be higher now. When you look at that $600, if you're doing the one trip to Hawaii, how much is it going to cost you to get breakfast every morning? So is that real? And if you're a family, that might only work for two people and not for everyone. You always have to read those details. Chasing that status, if you're not a frequent traveler, often is not the way to go. And you look at how you can spend that money to just book the rate you want or book the perk you want. Do you want the better room? Just pay for it. Do you want breakfast? Just buy breakfast. But every once in a while, you can get some perks and it makes sense, especially if you are going to take more trips. So that's something to consider.
Like, that's really good to know. I wanted to flag something real quick for listeners here. One thing that Kim had mentioned to me before we recorded is that the resort fees in Hawaii can really sneak up on people. I actually did a whole episode on this, episode 48, so you can go back and listen to that if you haven't already. But Kim, from your side, as the person actually booking these rooms, is there anything the resort fee episode wouldn't cover, like things you see as a travel agent that most guests would never know about?
I think most of the time people are pretty comfortable with it, and your episode covers a lot of the big deals. The biggest thing I think people don't realize is that tax is often included on that resort fee. So with tax in Hawaii being, I think it's close to 19% for the hotel taxing now. So when you look at that $50 resort fee, that's actually going to be $60 per night. So I think that's the biggest little thing that people don't always, it sneaks up on them when they have in their mind, like, oh, it's going to be $200 extra when I check out. And it's like, nope, it actually turned into $300 extra because of that extra tax cost. So that's one of the burdens to look at. And then the biggest one I think of is that there's now coming up where, Hawaii is really popular for rentals, like condo style rentals. And I had a client recently who paid $424 for a cleaning fee. And the cleaning fees can be
Wow.
hidden a little bit. Yeah. So that's not the resort fee. That
Mhm.
was a cleaning fee. And it was a flat fee. So
Mhm.
they were only there 3 nights. So it's not like, oh, it's $100 a night or something like that. It was a flat fee. So if somebody would have stayed one night there, it would be a $424 cleaning fee. So if you are staying in something it feels, and a lot of times you don't even know because it feels like a hotel, like you can book it like a hotel. They have a website like a hotel, but it's actually almost like a vacation rental timeshare type situation, but they're managed. So that those cleaning fees really can be high. So that's another thing that's different than resort fee, but I wanted to include, mentioning it because I think it's, I was shocked at that price point. I was thinking cleaning fees of, $50 a night or something like that. But yeah.
That is crazy. And I know that a lot of people just assume that vacation rentals are going to be a lot cheaper than hotels. So they don't even look at the hotels and they only look at the vacation rentals. So that's something really good that I'm glad that you highlighted because people don't want to pay resort fees, but they also don't want to pay those crazy high cleaning fees either.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can save money on food. That's great with vacation
Yeah.
rentals. It really,
Yeah.
especially in Hawaii, but that's just something to keep in mind. And Thing about those kind of resorts though versus an Airbnb cleaning fee is, it seems like Airbnb now they want you to do half the housework yourself before you
Yes.
even check out, yet you're still paying a $500 cleaning fee.
Yes.
That is one thing where the rental companies do benefit, where that is you truly can just leave, so that
Yeah.
works out. But you
Oh,
also
that's
don't have
good.
housekeeping during your stay. Whereas at hotels, you have housekeeping. So for a busy family, we've got, towels and garbage and who knows what else.
And all that sand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what do you want your vacation to look like? Do you want to just have a different home or do you want to be on vacations?
Yes. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is probably the question that I get most in consultations. Should I use my points for this trip or just pay cash? So, what's your actual answer for this?
This is such a big question. I get asked this question tons of time, and I myself, as a points user and frequent traveler, struggle with this so much. And thanks to the, multiple points influencer content creators I've been following over the years, I've kind of come to an answer for this that I think can help people. Technically, you should look at the redemption value. So you look at what is going to be the cash price of whatever you're getting and divided by the number of points, and you get like a price per point for that. And so each point program has been valued by different, all these like the points guy, or they all have an estimated value of each point. So Alaska used to be close to 2 cents. It's closer to like 1.6, I think, right now. So I guess it's called Atmos now. So it gives you an idea. If you do that math and those points are, around that value, then that's a good use of that point right then. And so that's always something to consider. They always say, like when you're using those, they're called multi-currency points, where you can like Chase, Amex, those kind of points that can be transferred to partners. The 2 cent mark is kind of the considered the holy grail. You always want to try and get a 2 cent per point redemption. So that's just the math. Like if you want to be technical, that's the math to do to give you an idea. So if you're doing the math and it's at a 1 cent value, might not be the best use of your points. But I have a caveat for that, being that a lot of your guests or your, travelers that are listening to you, they're probably doing Hawaii. They don't maybe travel as often, or they're traveling with a larger family. And this might be kind of a big splurge trip because Hawaii is expensive. It's crazy. You can go to Europe for the same price. So it's very expensive. So I think that if the money that you're spending on this trip is going to be a hindrance or a stress for you, and you have these points just sitting there, the points are a depreciating value. Every year, points programs make things more, you have to spend more points to get the same thing you got a year or two prior. So that's a depreciating asset. So using those points when you have them makes a lot of sense, because saving them up, it's not like they're going to be worth more in 5 years. It doesn't work like that. So I would say if you have points and you're, it would help you make this trip less stressful on a financial side, then use the points. But if you are doing that valuation, your redemption value is a cent or even less, and you have another trip or you have another opportunity to use those points in the next year or so, I'd probably say just spend the cash and don't redeem them when they're not a good redemption value.
That was a great answer. And I know that I had reached out to you a few weeks ago personally because I wanted to go to Kauai to visit my mom, but I wanted to stay in a resort because I want to bring my son. And I know I sent you a message going, is this good? Like the points value. So this was perfect because I know it
was terrifying to me when you sent me that.
Well, but I have the same question that all of my clients have, because it is so expensive and you see that price tag for, wherever you're going to stay in Hawaii and you go, gosh, is it better if I just use my points? Because I earn points quickly. So I was like, I don't want to hang on to them. I want to spend them, but it's just, I don't know. It's such a tricky decision for a lot of people. So you really helped me a couple of weeks ago. So I'm glad that you were able to help all my listeners here too.
Yeah. Well, and I think you also said another big tip is that you earn points quickly. So if you just you just got one sign up bonus and you don't spend a lot, or you're not able to earn bonuses easily, then that's something to consider. But if you want to just sign up for another credit card and get another bonus for next year's trip, then that's, you can earn those points back and spend them on this year's trip. So yeah, that's a good insight.
Oh, totally. Are there any situations where paying cash is genuinely the smarter move over points, even if someone has plenty of points to cover the trip?
Yeah, I think that I brought up one of the big points is just that if it's going to be a financial insecurity for you to pay cash, I think using the points makes the smart move. Just don't put added stress on your lifestyle and your family where you're stressed the whole time you're on the trip worrying about spending more money, because Hawaii is one of those trips where every day you're going to be plopping down that credit card for more stuff. And so you don't want to go all in thinking you spent money in one place and then you keep spending money and you're stressed. So that would be one thing. I think also if you're a family who rarely travels, and so this is like your one big trip, you using those points makes sense. But if you travel frequently and you keep earning those points and the redemption value isn't there, then paying cash might make more sense, and use those points for another trip where maybe you get a better redemption value, or maybe you're going to Europe and you can get some great, you're going to need 2 rooms in Europe because you're a family of 4, and Europe rooms don't fit big families very well. So just kind of think of that way how you're doing it. And then I would say the other big caveat or use would be if you are chasing status, like if you're close to status, that will get you some kind of perks that will actually pay off. So I was telling my daughter, like, she really wants to try and hit silver status again. She got silver status because of all of our flights, one year. She's like, I get a free bag. And she's so happy about it. I'm like, you can just pay by how many flights you would have to take. You can just pay for your bags. Don't always think that status is worth stuff. You actually have to look at what the benefits are of that status and whether it makes sense to chase it, if that makes sense. But if you're close and you can just pay for your ticket, then that might be a good idea. And then don't be scared if your kids are old enough. Don't be scared to book separate flights or reservations so you can book, especially this mostly is for flights. So if you have enough points to cover one ticket or two, you can book one person on points and then book 3 other people on, cash, or however that works that makes sense. Don't be scared to do that kind of setup. As long as if you have young kids, you have to get around the unaccompanied minor. It's always a good idea to make sure you book you're an adult with the young kids. So you don't want to split those, but otherwise, if you're older, you're fine.
Perfect. Yeah, my kids are still youngish, and so I always have to be really careful when I'm using the points and companion fares and all that kind of stuff to make sure that they're still on one of our reservations.
Yeah, I'm a terrible mother. I get upgrade on the upgrade. I know this sounds horrible. I get on the upgrade list. So when we would do family trips, I would like pay for my ticket. And I would be on the upgrade list, but I couldn't upgrade the whole family. I can sometimes get a +1, but I wouldn't know who to pick between my girls. So I would put Paul and the girls on one reservation and me on my own. And then sometimes I would get upgraded and they all hated me for it. They're like, Mom. And I'm like, hey, this is my little benefit of doing all the work to plan this trip and doing.
Absolutely. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. I've got one more question about points. What about somebody who's never gotten into the points game at all? Is there even enough runway to make it worth starting if Hawaii is the goal?
Yeah, I think that this is one where if you're a year or more out, absolutely. And there are tons of points. I'm definitely not a points influencer. There are people who this is their bread and butter. They talk this stuff. They know when every bonus is coming. I can give you a few names maybe for the show notes of people I know there's one like Katie something, and she does a lot with Southwest and more budget level travel. And she's been to Hawaii on points a few times. She's good. And then there's another one, Annie something, and she does points travel as a family. So I think if you can find some of those people to follow and start listening, there's a good resource. And a lot of them have free resources to help you get started. You can sometimes message them like, hey, I'm trying to plan a Hawaii trip for my family. Do you have any posts or articles or options for me to help me get started? And they'll likely send you some information. But I think that would be the advice I would have for everyone. I think that the tricky thing with that to think about is that the points, people use points a lot in Hawaii. So if you're a few months out and you're hoping to stay at, the Hyatt Regency on Waikiki, there's limited rooms available for that. And so if you think you're going to do all this work and spend all this stuff and there's no room, I see that happen all the time, that people are like, I signed up for this credit card. I did all this so that I could plan this trip and stay here that I saw on Instagram. And it's like, but when I go, it shows nothing available. And it's like, that happened to me. I was convinced I was going to stay at this Hyatt hotel in Paris. And I was booking, 5 months-ish out, and it wasn't available and I couldn't do it. So I had to, rethink my plan. Thankfully, I knew to expect that, but just know that just because you want the hotel doesn't mean they're going to have points rooms available. Flights are a little trickier. There's stuff called saver fares and stuff where your points are you want to get a deal with your points from my standpoint. So, and Alaska Atmos is common for us on the West Coast and going to Hawaii. So what those points tickets might cost doesn't make a lot of sense. And so you might go, oh, I see it available. I'm going to book it, but you just paid 60,000 points, which can also fly you to Frankfurt, Germany. So in business class. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh,
why
perfect.
following those, like follow some of those points people to really make sure your journey is going the right way and you don't waste or forget it. And then if you're too close and there's no point rooms even available, then it's
Yeah.
probably too late.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me too. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because I had to book my last Hawaii trip. I used points and I did it, gosh, probably 10 months in advance because I was like, hey, I know I want to secure these rooms. And I knew I could cancel them if I didn't end up going. But
Yes.
then now I'm thinking about going in November. So we're only a few months out, sort of like
Yep.
not a ton of months out. And so I was already seeing a tons of hotels that I thought I could stay at that didn't have any rooms available. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to
And
snap
there
them
is
up.
You have to snap them up. And Hawaii is one of those tricky ones where the people are planning in advance. So those ones when
Yes.
they're waiting for the 1 year to open and they're booking the rooms at the prime resorts. But there are things will happen. And like you said, the nice thing is with points bookings, a lot of times you can cancel them. So if you do make a points booking, you might cancel it, which might open it for someone else, or they might be on overcapacity and they won't even re-release that award availability. So it's a tricky world.
Totally. Okay. So here's a question I know some people are thinking, but won't say out loud. In 2026, with every booking app and comparison site available, what does a travel agent actually do that I can't do myself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to start with a myth buster first. I had a client come to me and I think they thought that I was going to have access to these like magic rates that they weren't seeing anywhere else. And I was going to save them, you know, 40% on their vacation. And travel agents don't work that way because it is 2026 and so many companies and businesses can go direct to consumer online. There's very little margin for travel agents. So we often are seeing the same rates you're seeing. So you're not using a travel agent to get a deal. However, the reason you use a travel agent or advisor is because it's 2026, there's so much information out there. There are so many things to research and blog posts to read and hotels to review and it can be overwhelming. Like, how do you even compare? I've talked to people who are like, I've looked at all these hotels and I don't even know which one to choose. And, especially if you're not a frequent traveler and you don't maybe know, like, oh, let's compare room sizes. Like, oh, this one's only this many square feet. This one, so for a family of four, you're probably going to want a little more space because you're going to feel really cramped for 5 to 7 days in, a 200 square foot room. And so it's nice to be able to talk to an advisor or agent who's familiar with some of those things that you should compare, like what you should compare and what you should look at. And also, so we help you do all that research, narrow it down. And so many people are on computers. They don't want to come home after work and sit on a computer and plan a vacation. Some people love it. Like I love vacation planning. It's a hobby to me. Like I work late all the time because it's interesting to me. But a lot of people, that's not your thing. And so that's where a travel agent and advisor can help you is that we can kind of do all that behind the scenes and that research and help really then give you a list and say, here's the pros and cons. This is good for this, not so much this. And then you can have it laid out in front of you. And it makes the choice making and the decision making much easier where you can just have someone kind of guide you on that round. I would say also it's nice to know that travel agents, especially, agents like myself, I'm a Virtuoso member. And so for upscale properties, like I'm working with one of your consultations and we're looking at like the Four Seasons in Coalina. And they have perks where I can get breakfast, they get room upgrades, they get $100 spending credit. Some of those are available through different platforms or partners. But when you work with an agent, we can really look at that and say, hey, I can go ahead and get you these added perks. So I think that's the other reason you would work with advisor. And then overall, we just help make sure your trip gets planned in a fluid way and stuff doesn't jump up on you, like all that transportation costs, like, oh, well, how are you going to get from the hotel? And, how are you going to get to this activity? Like we just had that with another client is like the luau is ways away. And when you have a 3-year-old, you can't just hop in an Uber. So it's that kind of like figuring out that transportation of like those little things that an agent advisor, that's what we think of. And that's how we work. So that's what I would say.
That's
You're paying
perfect.
for, you're getting the expertise and a well-planned trip. You're not just getting, a deal.
I love that. Is there a type of Kauai trip where you'd really push someone to use an agent, like a scenario where you'd say, please don't try to figure this out on your own?
Yeah, I would say number one would be like, if you're not a frequent traveler, if you don't, definitely having someone who can help you go like, well, you need to go into this airport, or that's not even the right island, or, like, did you, this happened, to consider this. Do you really want to go on a boat trip at 7 a.m. When jet lagged, or if you're not accustomed to it and it's an hour drive to the marina where you're going to catch from where you're staying? And like, there's those kind of things. Like Hawaii is not like, it's often just singular roads that get very backed up. So you can't just go like, oh, I'm just going to hop over here and get picked up for my excursion. So I would say if you're not familiar with planning that kind of trip, knowing how that would be a reason I would want someone to use an agent, is just to help them kind of think through all those navigational and those planning steps for each item and activity. And then the other thing I would say is hopping, I think, is useful. Just keeping things in line of like, well, you're going to go from, Maui to Oahu, or you're going to Kauai, and you want to land at this time, and this flight's probably going to be best. It allows you time to get checked out, and, you're going to need to use this amount of time to transfer to the airport to get there early. And then just all those logistical things of island being itinerary, I think, is useful. And again, that's another one where people just get overwhelmed. Like all the hotels, they start blending in together. I mean, I just worked with a client who was staying in 3 different properties. So there was, Hilo and, like all these different areas and moving it all around. And even for me, I was trying to make sure I was keeping every hotel straight. Like these dates on this one, these dates on this one, these dates on this one, so. And then the car rental, it's like, okay, she needs to drop the car one way, but keep it longer. So that kind of logistics of let's change the drop-off location, and which in Hawaii is really difficult and not always.
I want to walk listeners through how exactly we work together, because I think the way that we do it is a little different than what people might expect. So when somebody books a consultation with me, we hop on a Zoom call, and at some point in that conversation, I might bring your name up. Can you describe what happens from your side when I make that introduction?
Yeah. So it works out well because what happens after you're handed off, you send me an email and it kind of covers where they're going, what they're thinking. I love that, especially when you're able to tell me, hey, it's this many people or kids with this age, because the kids thing, people don't always think of that with hotels. And, that really makes a difference when you have, even though, and this is as someone with kids who are not under 18, you don't realize that 18-year-old is now an adult, and that sometimes affects things with hotel occupancy and all of that. So that works nice where you hand it off. I'm able to see, kind of get an idea of who the people are. And then you've already talked to them about what some of their priorities are for hotels. So I get an idea in my mind of like what they're looking for. And then I can kind of go, well, this hotel might be better, or, they're a family of 5. This hotel doesn't have anything on their standard setups unless they're in one of the 3 suites they offer. So we might need to look at a different property. So being able to kind of walk through those things and get that idea of what they're doing. But I think the biggest thing is you've already told them maybe what islands they need to go to. So that helps me a lot, where I'm like, oh, okay, I already know that they're planning on, Maui, or they're going to go, so are they going to Kanapali, or are they going somewhere else? Are they going to go, or are they over on Oahu and they're wanting the North Shore vibe, or they're wanting the Ko'olina vibe versus the Waikiki Beach thing. So I think that's how we work well, is where you can kind of hand off some of those determinations, and then I can come in and use my experience, say, okay, how are we feeling about this? Like, where's your budget? Because, you can make recommendations on hotels, but then if I come in and I'm like, well, you're, way under budget on all this, but here's another option, or there might be something better here. And that can be useful.
Yeah, totally. For someone who's never worked with a travel agent before, what does that process actually look like once you're in the picture? Like, what can they expect?
Yeah, so I think travel agents and advisors work in a lot of different ways, but basically the formatting goes, you fill out an intake form, or you give me some initial information. I'm able to start getting quotes or layouts of what you're looking for. Do you need flights? I often, travel agents don't really make money on flights. A lot of agents who do book flights will charge an added fee. But sometimes if we have booking partners, they can bundle in and airfares, and sometimes they even get special airfare bundles, especially for the Caribbean. You can get special rate packages with airfare included. So if you want flights, I can always price out including flights. But if you're not looking for that, I also can help go, hey, let's get you, here's the legs we want, but I want you to go ahead and do the booking, because I can't, get you any benefit by booking it for you. So those are things to think about. And you get that idea, we get it planned out. I have an itinerary platform. And so I start plugging in everything we book when I put in what the price is going to be. And then you give a credit card authorization and that I do the booking for you. So you're not going through any of that. You give the authorization. I go ahead and go through and do all the bookings. I put all the confirmation numbers and you're left with this beautiful itinerary that tells you, your flight times, your hotels, what activities get booked each day. So you can actually use that as you're going on your trip. And if you have any extra bookings you've made on your own, I can drop those in for you. And it kind of works out where the trip starts coming together. And then as each thing gets added, a new authorization comes through, you just fill it out and you're like, that sounds good. And then it's off your agenda. You're not researching, you're not trying to figure it out. I do all that on the back end. So that's where the travel agents come in handy. If it's cruising, I do a lot with Alaska Cruises and cruising. And that's where you can kind of go, hey, I'm going to research all the cabins or make sure I get you this rate. And it's just a handoff. So I think it works well for Hawaii because the itinerary, putting it together and putting together all the parts, because most people do activities in Hawaii. So being able to look on like, this day I have this and how am I getting from the hotel? Oh yeah, we're booking this transfer for you. Or, oh, you're going to pick up the Hertz rental car, or, like dropping that in is nice.
Oh, totally. Is there anything that you wish people knew or had figured out before they came to you, like things that make the whole process smoother on your end?
The biggest thing is they need to know what they want me to do. So are they going to, they need to have that points decision already kind of made. Are they going to use what? Because our relationship, I don't charge a planning fee, but a lot of times when I'm planning a 7-day trip for someone and I have to put together all the hotels and the activities and get them restaurant recommendation, there's a planning fee with that. But for your clients, I waive the planning fee as that's part of our relationship. So if they know that they're already going to use points and stuff, that helps. Because if they come and I do all this work, because it is a lot of work for agents to do. And if I do all the work to get them prices and options, and then they're like, oh, I just booked the, Alani with DVC points, or I booked the Hilton with our Hilton points. All that time I spent, an effort I spent, I get nothing out of it. So I built a.
Okay, I hope you loved that as much as I did. I've known Kim for years, like this is someone who slept in my guest room. And I think what comes through when you talk to her is that she actually knows her stuff. She's not guessing. Now, if anything in that conversation made you realize your Hawaii trip is more complicated than you thought, or you've been staring at flight prices and hotel rates and you genuinely don't know if what you're seeing is good, that's exactly what my consultations are for. We get on a Zoom, we talk through your specific trip, and if you need someone to actually handle the booking, I'll connect you directly with Kim. You can grab a 60-minute or 90-minute session at hawaiitravelwithkids.com under Hawaii Travel Consultant. And if you already have your trip booked and you're more in did I miss anything mode, I have something for that too. It's called the Hawaii Itinerary Audit. It's $50. You send me what you have and I go through it and flag the things that tend to trip people up. Mistakes people don't realize they've made until they're standing in a parking lot in Lahaina wondering why they scheduled Old Lahaina Luau on their first night when they're landing at 5 p.m. Little things like that. You can find this at the resources page on hawaiitravelwithkids.com, which is also where I keep everything I mentioned today. Booking tools, car rental info, guides, all of it in one place. Summer travel is coming up fast, and if you're in the middle of planning right now is actually a really good time to get eyes on your trip before you're too locked in to change anything. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week. Aloha.
Relationship with the customer and the client for future, but it's just something I want them to already have that kind of decided. And then the other big thing I would say is their budget. It's the biggest, and be honest with yourself. Don't say a budget and also know what that budget's covering. Is that the whole trip out the door, or is that just getting there and then all you're spending on the island is its own budget? So kind of really knowing your budget is the biggest thing I would say for people, because Hawaii is a sticker shock for a lot of people, especially when you start putting in the taxes and the resort fees and car rentals. And so that's one of the things I would just want people to really know in advance what they want to spend, so that neither of our time is wasted, like getting that they tell me they can spend $10,000 and then they're like, oh, it's more like 5,000, please. So yeah.
Yeah, it's always so tricky. And the sticker shock in Hawaii is real. I think a lot of people really don't anticipate that. Even I get sticker shocked at the parking fees, like in Waikiki.
Yeah.
Where I know that it's going to be expensive, but when I see it, the end of, my week there and I go, holy moly, that was so expensive. Like, should I have rethought this? Yeah.
It can be crazy.
It is nuts. Okay, so last thing. Where can people find you if they want to work with you or keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find me on all the major social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, all of that. My handle is Stuffed Suitcase everywhere. So StuffedSuitcase, Stuffed Suitcase. And then that's my website as well. So stuffedsuitcase.com. I have blog articles there. I have books for sale, and I even have a work with me button that'll kind of show you all about my travel expertise. And then there's a form on there that you can fill out to get started. Or you can always, of course, talk to Marcie, and then she hands you off once you guys figure out where the dream Hawaii vacation looks like for you.
Okay, I hope you love that as much as I did. I've known Kim for years. Like, this is someone who slept in my guest room. And I think what comes through when you talk to her is that she actually knows her stuff. She's not guessing. Now, if anything in that conversation made you realize your Hawaii trip is more complicated than you thought, or you've been staring at flight prices and hotel rates and you genuinely don't know if what you're seeing is good, that's exactly what my consultations are for. We get on a Zoom, we talk through your specific trip, and if you need someone to actually handle the booking, I'll connect you directly with Kim. You can grab a 60-minute or 90-minute session at hawaiitravelwithkids.com under Hawaii Travel Consultant. And if you already have your trip booked and you're more in did I miss anything mode, I have something for that too. It's called the Hawaii Itinerary Audit. It's $50, you send me what you have, and I go through it and flag the things that tend to trip people up. Mistakes people don't realize they've made until they're standing in a parking lot in Lahaina wondering why they scheduled Old Lahaina Luau on their first night when they're landing at 5 p.m. Little things like that. You can find that at the resources page on hawaiitravelwithkids.com, which is also where I keep everything I mentioned today, booking tools, car rental info, guides, all of it in one place. Summer travel is coming up fast. If you're in the middle of planning right now is actually a really good time to get eyes on your trip before you're too locked in to change anything. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week. Aloha.